A Guide to Reading Research, Conceptual Articles by Lauren Berlingo. What are conceptual articles? Conceptual articles do not contain original data. Instead, their focus is on integrating and proposing new relationships among constructs. These articles develop logical and complete arguments for associations rather than testing them. Witten noted that conceptual papers should be judged on 7 criteria: what's new, so what, why so, well done well, why now, and who cares. Although theory papers don't need to address all 7 of Witten's questions in detail, it is suggested that it is critical that they take a problem-focused approach and address the what's new question thoroughly. Conceptual papers are not proposing new theories, but they are bridging existing theories in interesting ways, linking work across disciplines, providing multi-level insights, and broadening the scope of the reader's thinking. It is the what's new question that distinguishes a conceptual paper from a review. Wick added that propositions in a conceptual paper should be more closely linked to testable hypotheses, and in doing so offer a bridge between validation and usefulness of the concept or concepts. Conceptual framework. According to Camp, a conceptual framework is a structure which the researcher believes can best explain the natural progression of the phenomenon to be studied. This structure is linked with the concepts, research, and important theories used in promoting and systemizing the knowledge supported by the researchers. According to Lear and Smith, the conceptual framework presents an integrated way of looking at a problem under study. In a statistical perspective, the conceptual framework describes the relationship between the main concepts of a study. It shows the series of action the researcher intends carrying out in a research study. Miles and Huberman suggest that conceptual frameworks can be graphical or narrative in form, showing the key variables or constructs to be studied and the presumed relationships between them. So what's the point? Maxwell, in 2005, argued that conceptual papers were good to ground your proposed study in the relevant work previously done. Also, it gives readers a clear sense of conceptual or theoretical approach to the phenomena that you propose to study. They serve 2 purposes. 1, how does your research fit into what is already known? And 2, how will your research make a contribution on the topic to the field of study? What's the importance of conceptual framework? The conceptual framework offers benefits to research. It assists researchers in choosing a phenomenon to be investigated. It allows researchers to present their treatments or solutions to a problem, and it calls attention to reasons why a research topic is worth studying. Some guiding questions to think about when looking at conceptual papers. Why am I reading this? What is the main idea of this article? What information do I need from this? What information can I use from this? And what are the authors trying to do? Here we have 2 example articles. We're going to look at the titles. The first title tells us that the authors are going to be making recommendations based on culturally responsive practices for teacher educators. When the researchers use the word recommendations, it lets the reader know that this is a conceptual piece. Similarly, in the second example, this title directly tells the reader that this article is about the conceptual models of disabilities. Reading the titles can tell you what type of article you will be reading. The introduction consists of a review of pre-existing literature that builds upon the rationale or concepts that will be discussed in the body of the article. Taking a closer look. For example, we're going to use the Culturally Responsive Practice for Teacher Educators article from the title. We were able to tell that they are going to talk about culturally responsive practices and their recommendations for post-secondary teachers. In the introduction, in this case, it is building rationale using research that supports their idea for the use of culturally responsive practices. You'll see here, they begin their paper talking about the diverse population of our nation and how it is continuing to grow more and more diverse in terms of race, ethnic, and linguistic diversity. The authors then comment on diversity of school-age students, academic ability, achievement, and skill, adding that because of this, Special education teachers will also be working with students with disabilities from ethnically, racially, and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Furthering the notion that this country is growing more diverse, the authors pose the same sentiment for students in post-secondary settings, and how those that work with this population also need to have familiarity with those that they will be working with. Towards the end of the introduction, the authors give statistics about the nation's teaching population, showing that white teachers are still the majority in all schools, and how that the education community is striving to increase teacher diversity to reflect the student population. This introduction is a great example of how authors of a conceptual paper begin to build rationale for the ideas and concepts they are going to lay out in the rest of the paper. The sections of the paper that follow the introduction usually elaborate on the point the authors are trying to make, linking pre-existing research with the concepts they are putting forth. For example, just looking at the same article we used before titled Culturally Responsive Practice for Teacher Educators, 8 Recommendations, the authors follow the introduction with an explanation of their main topic that their concepts are surrounded by: culturally responsive practice and teacher educators. Here the author gives their recommendation and defines it, and then they give their reasons on why they are recommending future teachers be educated in an environment that has a teacher that engages in culturally responsive practice. This is where they link what they illustrated in the introduction to what they are proposing. Next, the authors will describe in detail the concept or idea they are recommending. In this case, the authors put forth 8 recommendations of culturally responsive practices that post-secondary teachers can practice. I included snippets of each one that they put in their paper. In any journal article, the conclusion section wraps up the paper by referring to important ideas and findings. In this case, the researchers start their conclusion with information from their research on the specified topic. They then refer to the concepts they suggested, linking previous research to what they are proposing, while restating the rationale for their proposition. Every journal article ends with a reference list in APA format, where the authors cite where they received their information. These can also be great resources to use if you are looking to find more information on the topic discussed in the article. This is the reference for the paper that was used as an example in this article.